Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Deviant Mind. This is Dominika.
And this is Christopher.
And we are on part 2 of Lori Vallow Daybell and this insane case of a bunch of murders, including her children. And we were just discussing where we left off. So for people who haven't listened to the first episode, definitely go back because there's a lot of players in this. There's two different, more than two families. Three different families involved, the death of spouses, including Charles Vallow, which we spoke about, who was Lori's husband, who was shot by her brother, Alex Cox. And we had just talked about Tammy Daybell and what a wonderful human being she was. And that's kind of where we left off in the first episode. And Tammy Daybell was the wife of Chad Daybell. And they had been together for a very, very long time. And so we had talked about how amazing she was, but we didn't entirely get into her murder. But we wanted to kind of go back in the timeline around July, August of 2019. Now, this was around the time that Charles had been shot to death by Alex. And on July 18th, 2019, Lori found out that Charles had not named her as the beneficiary for his $1 million life insurance policy. Instead, he had chosen his sister to be that. And his sister was Kay Woodcock, who was the grandmother of JJ Vallow, who she had adopted with Charles Vallow. So she was the beneficiary to that. But while this was all happening, Lori and Chad Daybell were completely going crazy on chat on their burner phones. Because again, this is 2019. So we have a lot of electronic information with cell phones and computers. And of course, as maybe you don't know, but Lori was tried and was found guilty on 2 counts of murder. And she's in jail for quite some time. And Chad Daybell's case
I think it's 7 counts.
How much?
I believe
it was 7 counts. Yeah, but it was, exactly. So 7 counts, but she was put away for the murder of her children.
Right. Yeah, so 2 counts of murder.
Yeah.
And also with the Charles murder and Alex used to his defense that it was in self-defense that he bore witness to his brother-in-law beating on his sister, intervened and shot him to death. So I think consequently he didn't serve any time for that.
And then he died. So he died of natural causes. He died of a blood clot in his lungs, I believe. So he was never tried for that murder, nor was he arrested for that murder.
But he was also, during this whole trial of Chad and Lori, he was due to testify, but mysteriously died around the time he was supposed to. And then his attorney passed away as well, not long after he did.
Which, of course, this is all, this is all happening during the COVID time. So, I mean, lots of people died. And so I'm assuming that had something to do with it. But so he died, his lawyer died. But he was also, there was somebody who took a shot at Tammy Daybell before she passed away. And I believe the police believed it was probably him who did it. But if we go back to July, this is and this is around the time that Chad and Lori are texting each other about Kauai and, quote, the plan. They're writing love letters to each other. One of the newspaper articles I read, they sounded like it was like romance novels, like they were writing that much. And they were also around this time. Lori had a niece, Melanie, who was in the same cult as she was, and they were calling Brandon dark and an evil spirit. And Melanie was saying that he was part of Hitler's group, which was considered very dark, very high dark. because there was a very specific terminology to this. And around this time, between August and October of 2019, the Rexburg Police Department feel that Alex Cox purchased 46 guns. So he was getting ready for stuff.
For doomsday.
For doomsday, exactly. And on August 10th, 2019, Kay Woodcox said that that was the last conversation she had with JJ. And Kay Woodcox is the one who asked the police to do a welfare check. And that's how the kids were discovered that they were gone.
I just to back it up and to let everyone know, at the beginning of the relationship, Lori claims that she had in her closet a portal to Chad. And so whenever they were separated, or he was in another city and he was giving his speeches, because he was a prophet, right? He claimed that he was a prophet.
Yeah.
So he'd visit her through this portal spiritually. So it was kind of like, a teleportation device, a spiritual teleportation. So she could be at home, but she'll open up the closet and he'll come through. Just to give everyone a background as to what their mindset here was.
Yeah, just the cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs crazy.
Yes.
So around August was also when Lori removed Tylee and JJ from her $2 million life insurance policy. And she instead made her oldest son, Colby Ryan, the only beneficiary. And this was on August 12th. And then this is around the same time that she moved to Rexburg, and she submitted a rental application saying that her income was the amount of combined Social Security benefits for herself, JJ, and Tylee. So she was getting Social Security benefits from the death of her husband, Charles Vallow, and Tylee was getting it from her own dad. And I'm assuming JJ was getting benefits because he was autistic.
He was.
Yeah. So, and she was supposed to be using those those benefits for her children, not using it for the rental application. And now the things start getting really creepy here. So there's direct deposits from Tylee, who is the daughter. Her Social Security payments go from her account to a newly created joint account for Lori and Tylee. So all of a sudden, Lori now has access to her money. And between August 31st and early September 2019, Lori, Tylee, JJ, Alex, and Melanie Pawlowski moved to Rexburg, Idaho, which was very near where Chad Daybell lived. Now, Melanie, at this point, if you remember, had already dumped her husband, Brandon. And that was around the same time that Lori started telling her bestie named Melanie Gibb that JJ was possessed. And that was around the same month that Tylee realized that the money she was supposed to have in her bank account to pay for her auto payment for her Jeep came back with insufficient funds, and her bank account had been wiped out. So this is going to be like a little, like we have a timeline here, but because there's so much information, we figured like it would be good just to go step by step, because it's very confusing, because when the kids disappear, it's actually not when they get discovered that they disappear. So
that's absolutely right.
It's one of those strange cases. So on September 3rd, 2019, Lori enrolled JJ at Kennedy Elementary School in Rexburg. And on September 8th, Chad signed an application with Tammy to increase her life insurance to the maximum amount allowed on the policy. And now, I
believe they're living in the same. By the way, I believe they're living in the same building complex.
Oh, they're in the same complex, not just the same town. Okay.
Yeah.
Which I guess makes sense because the love is so strong, apparently.
Yes.
So on September 8th is also the same day that Tylee, JJ, Lori, and Alex visited Yellowstone National Park. And this is when officials say is the last time anyone saw Tylee alive. And that was the last time there was a last in-person purchase from Tylee's bank account. when it was discovered that this was the last time anybody saw her, the FBI was asking anybody for help who may have photos of the family during that day to the park. So September 8th is the last time that anybody sees Tylee alive. Now, September 9th, phone records place Cox, which is Alex Cox, which is Lori's brother, on Chad's property in the general area where investigators later found Tylee's remains. So it goes to seem like she was killed on September 8th and was buried on September 9th.
JJ as well, from what I understand.
Yes, but JJ dies later. There's also phone records that show that Chad texted Tammy. Chad is the boyfriend, Chad Daybell, and told her he shot a raccoon and buried it in their pet cemetery. And by what the FBI and the police believe, this was Tylee's body. He also said that he found the raccoon when he was burning the limb debris by the fire pit. So it's like from the trees, which makes sense because Tylee's body was very badly burned. This is September 9th. So this is when the actual death happens of Tylee. On September 10th and the 16th, Lori deposited money into Tylee's account, but then it was immediately Venmoed to Colby Ryan, Lori's son. And police later found that there were 29 deposits into Tylee's account from Lori's account, and then the money was immediately Venmoed to Ryan. So again, I don't know. Did she kill her daughter for money? Right now, it sure seems like it. Well, also, Tylee did not like Chad Daybell. Mid-September 2019, Alex's girlfriend, Zulema, who later becomes his wife, said she visited Lori but didn't see Tylee. And when she asked Lori where Tylee was, Lori allegedly said, quote, she had to be freed, end quote. And when Zulema asked what she meant, and Lori put her hand in Zulema's face and said, don't ask. Mm-hmm. So on September 18th, 2019, JJ and Lori's Social Security benefits were deposited, and they were each $19.51 each. And Lori was still lying to people, saying that she had a teenage daughter who was at school in Rexenberg. And so she was kind of keeping up the pretense that Tylee was still alive, even though she wasn't. And
she was a very convincing manipulator. I have to throw out there. She was, it was big, with the pageant background. She, liked being on TV whenever there was a spotlight, even when arrested for all of this. Really enjoyed the spotlight. So she's able to convince people of whatever she wants, and I think that really helps her to the benefit over this time. Perhaps something she'll learn from her mom.
Right, exactly. So this is around the time where people start trying to ask where JJ was. So supposedly the police found Lori searching the internet for Kennedy Elementary, Rexburg, Idaho phone number and defined possess. And on September 22nd is when people say was the last time that JJ was seen alive. So Melanie Gibb and her boyfriend, David Warwick, visited Lori in Idaho. And this was September 22nd. And Lori lied to Melanie and told her that Tylee was at BYU in Idaho with her roommates. Tylee was never enrolled at BYU, Idaho, or at any school. And then when Melanie asked Lori where Tylee's belongings were, Lori had said that she was put in storage. So there's no hint of Tylee anywhere in the house. And during the weekend that Melanie and her boyfriend were there, they interacted with Chad several times. And they said that Chad and Lori were very romantic together. And that Chad also allegedly told Warwick that Tammy was a good wife, but her time was coming up. And that was a direct quote. And he claimed that he had had a dream that Tammy was going to die by the time she was 50. Now, during this weekend, there was some crazy talk from Lori to Melanie about how JJ had an evil spirit in him. And she said that she found this out from Chad. So Chad was the one that told her, and that JJ's behavior was becoming more and more difficult. And he would say things like, quote, "I love Satan." Mm-hmm. And when Melanie saw JJ for that last time, she said he looked pretty normal. And Lori said that she wasn't going to be taking care of JJ much longer because Kay, her now dead husband's sister, was going to be taking care of JJ going forward. So the last time anyone saw JJ alive was on 10:30 p.m. on September 22nd, 2019. And Melanie saw Alex, the brother, taking JJ upstairs. And that was the last proof of life. That there's a photo actually of JJ sitting on a couch in Lori's front room. And that's
with the red pajamas.
With the red pajamas, with saying "Sleepy Hero" on it.
And as a reminder, the same spirits and demons were in Tylee as well, which we touch upon in part one. Hillary being one of these evil demons that was possessing zombies, rather, possessing her daughter. So yes, once again, Chad's influence of doomsday, the fact that people have demons and evil spirits inside of them, lead Lori to believe it. She absolutely believes it, and they've gone missing now.
Yeah. So this is September 23rd, 2019, which is the day after. This is where the Rexburg Police Department believe that JJ was killed. And Melanie stayed in Tylee's room that weekend. Warwick stayed in JJ's room during their visit. But Melanie told the cops later that David woke up sometime after midnight and he was very troubled because he said he had like the worst nightmare of his life. And Melanie tried to go into Lori's room, but the door was locked and neither Lori nor Chad responded to her texts.
Wow.
That morning, Lori said that she told Warwick that JJ had an episode climbing on the cabinets and fridge and knocked over a picture of Jesus Christ, because God forbid that happens. And when David Warwick asked if he could give JJ a blessing, Lori told him that Alex was already taking care of him, and Melanie and David left that home. And that was the last time they saw JJ. And whenever Melanie asked where JJ was, Lori would never tell her. So September 24th, which is the next day, Lori emailed Kennedy Elementary and said that JJ was being removed from Kennedy and he was going to Louisiana with his grandparents. The principal called Lori and said that they could send JJ's records out to Louisiana when he was there. And Lori changed her story and said, "Oh, no, they're not moving to Louisiana. They're going to actually homeschool him." Yeah. So,
which could, again, in her manipulation tactics, could make sense considering he was autistic, right? So they could make an argument for that, he needed special attention, therefore we're going to homeschool him. I mean, it just all kind of works out. And also, I believe that's one of the reasons why Chad, let's face it, felt that he was possessed and a demon, is the fact that he was probably a very difficult child to raise, which is why, thank goodness, the sister was going to adopt, sort of take over, but never had the opportunity.
Well, and I mean, do we even know if that was actually the case, that she was going to adopt, or did these people want JJ's money?
Right.
And just get rid of them, because they just seem to be getting rid of people so they can be together. I mean, that to me seems like the whole goal of all this massacre of children and spouses. It's like, we got to be together. We've been together before. You're a prophet. I'm the prophet's right-hand woman. And we're going to experience bliss and joy ruling over dozens of planets out in outer space. So
it makes sense. It makes sense.
So the police found on September 30th that Lori searched the internet for, quote, "how to get the backseat out of my Jeep Wrangler," end quote. And Tylee actually drove a Jeep Wrangler before she was murdered. Now, when they found her body they could not tell how she died because of how badly burned it was. So on October 1st, 2019, Lori rented a 10 by 10 storage unit in Rexburg, and her and what people seem to think was Alex, her brother, they went in and out of the unit 9 times. And Chad also were in the storage facility together as well. And there was some thought that maybe that's where they were hiding the bodies initially, but obviously that they were found on Chad's property later.
Yeah, Alex's cell phone data definitely placed him at Chad's backyard for approximately 2 hours.
Yeah. And now this is around the time that people start getting shot at. So October 2nd, 2019, Brandon, Melanie's ex-husband, he's back in Arizona, and he was returning to his home, and he was shot at by someone. And the person was holding a gun with a silencer and shot at him in his car. And at that point, Brandon said that the only people who knew where he lived was Melanie and 4 others that he completely trusted. Arizona Central reported the shooter was driving a Jeep registered to Charles Vallow, who was dead. And a detective, Ray Hermosillo, contacted the Rexburg Police Department, contacted the Gilbert Police about the incident, and they asked them to conduct surveillance on Lori Daybell's apartment around this time. So the police were looking at Lori's apartment. They saw Chad and Lori going in and out, but never saw a teenage girl or a young boy. And this was the day that Lori also purchased a wedding ring on Amazon, which would later be seen on her finger at her marriage to Chad in Hawaii. This is
I believe this is around October they start getting their wedding rings. And it really isn't much longer after the children go missing, Tammy passes away, that they do go to Hawaii. And it's actually Tammy's life insurance that pays for the Hawaiian wedding.
Right, of course, because these people apparently are very, very smart about life insurance policies. So on October 9th, Tammy calls 911 and said a masked man shot at her in her driveway with what she thought at the time was a paintball gun. It was later indicated in court documents that Alex Cox, Lori Daybell's brother, attempted to shoot and kill Tammy that day. That was October 9th. On October 10th, Colby Ryan got more money from Tylee's Venmo with a message of "We love you." And the Rexford Police Department saw that the transaction was actually made using Tylee's phone. But the IP address for the transaction was registered to an address in Kansas City, Missouri, where Lori and her niece, Melanie Pawlowski, were. So they connected the phone to them. On October 19th, 2019, so this is 10 days after Tammy was shot at, Chad calls 911 and said Tammy died in her sleep. When the detectives visit their home, they determined that she died between 12:30 a.m. to 2 a.m. And Chad called 911 around 6 a.m. that he found his wife deceased. And he claimed that Tammy had been experiencing health problems previous to this. And when the detectives came to the home, they noted pink foam at her mouth. And the chief medical examiner, Eric Christensen, said that was a manifestation of a pulmonary edema. And that's why they believed it was due to a heart attack. And they claimed that her cause of death was natural. By the way, this woman is like not yet 50. So
not yet 50. And it's actually, it's Chad that's there. And then the eldest of 5, he goes into the room and is just in shock. He doesn't actually understand. And he thinks at first she's still asleep. So then the horror of just knowing that his mom, his dad, his dad's doing the whole act, and how can this be? So, I think from what I understand, the son, when I saw an interview with the 5 children, he had a really bad feeling that something was up because, as you just mentioned, she was fit, she was young, so made no sense.
Exactly. And so because the medical examiner said that it was natural, there was no autopsy performed. Nobody really thought it was suspicious except for maybe that one person that you talked about, and they believed Chad's story.
Yeah.
Of course, when Melanie asked Lori about Tammy's death, Lori said, quote, "She had a dark entity in her, and we had to do what we could to get the spirit out of her," end quote. Lori also told Melanie that Tammy was getting suspicious that Chad was having an affair. And that's allegedly when she turned dark. So that's
Yeah.
convenient.
Yeah.
Um,
You know, um, you would think it would be enough with Tammy out of the picture. And in fact, when Chad, around the same time that I guess Melanie is asking Lori, hey, how do you feel about this? Chad also was asked by friends, are you okay? And he was like, I'm fine. By all accounts, he had completely moved on.
yeah,
And he
completely.
claims that he just accepted this. He after all knew, he was a prophet and he knew about doomsday and all the and zombies and things, and he was fine. He just completely moved on.
Well, that and also she was buried on October 22nd in Springfield, Utah. They had a memorial service in Rexburg the next day, and Lori was that same day looking at wedding dresses. Chad was moving into her apartment. Like things were going fast. And to the point that on October 26th, Chad visited a couple in his LDS ward, the Gilberts, and he brought Lori over to them. And they were like two teenagers, the Gilberts said. And his arm was around her. She was giggling and laughing. They were like on top of each other. And um, yeah, she never mentioned her children, that she had children to this couple. And the couple were like, this is weird. We've never seen Chad behave like this. And mind you, Chad also has how many kids? 5? So is he
Five after
counting
30 years of marriage. 30 years.
30 years? So it's like, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so on November 4th, 2019, Tylee's Jeep was seized by the Rexburg Police Department. And because again, it was seen I don't know actually why they seized it. Do you know why they seized it? Because it was never reported missing, but I don't know why it was seized. But maybe this is when the Rexburg Police Department are like, wait a minute, there's something fishy going on.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me, I feel it had something to do with was it the Jeep? Which Jeep was that was
It was because
Lori's Jeep.
Charles Vallow's Jeep was the one that was used to
Right.
shoot at Brandon.
I mean, I think it could just be one of those things where they had for her vehicle information and they knew she was missing and they just saw the car. Maybe
Well, no, but
by
they don't know
happenstance.
she's missing yet.
At this point, they don't know. She hasn't.
No.
Everyone's like, hey, where is she? Oh, she's over at this thing. She's with her parents.
So I believe
So yeah.
the Woodcocks gets a welfare check for JJ on November 26th. So we're not there yet. So I don't know why they seized her Jeep. Maybe it was dumped somewhere. Probably something to look into. But just so everybody knows, on November 5th, 2019, Chad and Lori get married in Hawaii.
Yeah.
And they come back to live in Rexburg. Now, the police said that Chad told witnesses that Lori had no children under 18. And Lori told people that Tylee died years earlier. So she's already like, yeah, no, my kids are gone. On November 7th.
And if you're getting married, why when you have your children there,
Right, exactly. On November 7th, Zulema and Alex Cox got engaged. During a trip to Rexburg. And JJ and Tylee were obviously nowhere near Rexburg on this trip. And Zulema said that she didn't know where they were, but got photos from them in Hawaii. So apparently, Lori was telling the family that did know that these kids existed that they were in Hawaii and sending photos, which is weird. And then
if I may, I do believe this is around the timeline where they decide, because everything is starting to get suspicious, that Chad's family agrees to have her body exhumed.
Yeah. Oh, that's okay. All right. So that's the exhumation. Okay, that makes sense.
Then it's based upon his behavior and
Right.
everything
And
like
how
this
quickly he
in
gets
Hawaii.
married. Yeah. Yeah. And the
Uh,
fact that he put up his uh policy up, right?
yeah, yeah.
Um so um where are we at?
And the body exhumes. They find that Tammy had bruises and she died of asphyxiation.
Yeah, so this was an interesting thing. On mid-November 2019, the Chad and Lori visit the Gilberts again, which was the LDS couple from his ward. And at this point, Gilbert said she knew Lori's kids were missing. And she confronted Chad about the fact that he said Lori's daughter had died. And he denied that he never said that. And then Gilbert asked Chad, didn't Tylee deserve a life, a car, a boyfriend? And Chad reportedly responded, quote, she didn't like people and she didn't like me. Because November 18th, 2019 is when Kay Woodcock got the feeling that she should check the computer and noticed that Lori was using her dead brother's Amazon account to buy a beach wedding dress, a bathing suit, linen top, malachite wedding rings. And so this
It's
is
so
when,
brazen. It's just so brazen.
yeah. So this is when she was like, okay, you guys, I think we need to call in for the welfare check.
Yeah.
And um on November 24th, 2019, Alex Cox was given a quote, patriarchal blessing quote by Chad, because now he had the power of the quote, church of the firstborn, end quote. And in this blessing, Alex is now a missionary and he's going to be opening the portals of time. And he said that in previous creations, Alex was a valiant warrior fighting for truth and righteousness, always seeking to do what was right. And what was right was being right by his sister, Lori, which I have to assume that Alex killed both of these children. So on November 22nd, I'm sorry, November 26th, 2019, the Rexburg Police Department finally conduct a welfare check on JJ. And the Kay Woodcock said that she had not spoken to him in months. When they arrived, JJ was not home, and they saw Chad Daybell and Alex Cox unloading a pickup. So when Detective Hermosolo asked Cox if Lori was home, he said no. And he said that they were doing a welfare check on JJ and that Alex looked very scared and turned to Chad. Chad did not say anything. And when Hermosillo asked Cox where JJ was, he said he was in Louisiana, which Hermosillo said was impossible. So Hermosillo, he asked for Lori's phone number and Alex said he did not have it. And then he and another detective knocked on Lori's door, but nobody answered. And Detective Hermosillo said he saw Chad leaving his car and stopped him, leaving in his car. So Chad was like making a run for it. And he asked Chad when was the last time he saw JJ. And Chad said he last saw JJ in October in apartment 107 with Lori Vallow. And when Hermosillo asked how Chad knew Lori, he said he hardly knew her, except for the fact that he's her husband now, and that they had only met a couple of times. And
interesting to note that also down the line, both Lori and Chad will eventually cut ties with Alex completely.
Yes, because no surprise, these people are pathologically insane. When he would not give Lori's number until one of them caved, and Chad claimed he didn't want to originally give them her number because he felt that Hermosillo was accusing him of something. And Hermosillo, he called in more detectives and they got a warrant to go into the home. But they didn't because Lori finally returned their call and agreed to open the door to the two detectives. And then Lori claimed originally that JJ was with her friend, Melanie Gibb in Arizona, watching Frozen 2. Melanie said she originally did not answer the police because she didn't know what to do. She's like, oh, my friend's lying and it's the police, but I'm just going to lie to the police, which seems like a really bad choice. I don't know. Like,
forgive me, she was part of this group. Yes, part of his group.
Well, no, she claims she was never part of the cult.
Okay.
It's her claim.
Okay.
But she did finally confess to the police officers that JJ was never with her and that Lori told her to lie about his whereabouts and to take
Right.
photos of random children at the movie theater to show them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at this point, they're like, okay, this is something really, really weird. So on November 27th, which is a day later, the Rexburg Police Department, they served a search warrant. But when they arrived to the apartment, Chad and Lori were gone. They did enter the apartment and found that almost everything had been taken and that it was nearly empty.
Is this where they go back to Hawaii?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. And so in the garage, they found camouflage suit, lots of ammunition, a rifle, a handgun, rope, duct tape, several silencers. That sounds...
It's the end of the world. It's the end of... What else are you supposed to do?
I don't know, man.
A closet portal is not enough. When the end of the world is coming, you have to get to the Holy Land, and you gotta stay strapped. You have to have an AR.
Yeah, and they discovered emails from Chad and books written by Chad. They also searched Alex Cox's apartment and Melanie's apartment and found hazmat-looking white suits and a rental agreement for a storage unit in Rexburg. When they tried to get a hold of Lori and Chad, their phones were shut off. So Chad and Lori flew to Liahu, Hawaii on December 1st. Of course, their children were not with them. Now, December 6th was when Melanie Gibb contacted the police and said, yeah, Chad and Lori called me on November 26th and told me to lie about JJ's location. And this is December 11th is when Tammy Daybell's death is said as suspicious by the Fremont County Sheriff's Office, and her body was exhumed. And according to a Utah medical examiner, she died at the hands of another and died of asphyxiation. They also found that there were bruises on Tammy's arms that happened in the hours around the time of her death. And, quote, they were consistent with someone being restrained and would be consistent with asphyxia being cause of death as well, end quote. And that was from the coroner.
Which towards the end of this, I will explain why there's a pattern here to the way that these victims pass. And I also did hear that conversation where I guess Melody's on the phone with Lori, and she's just like, but where are they? And it's just this really wild conversation where Lori is just so nonchalant that she buys it. You know, I feel a lot of people just bought her being so, in other words, if she's not freaking out, as would be the normal expectation in a reaction to where are my children and is everything okay, and not even be specific to what they're up to and what they're doing, you know, it could be believable. You can manipulate someone into believing things are fine if you act as though things are fine. So I think that's what happened with a lot of these victims. Victims in terms of just being involved and having them ask them to lie in stories like this.
Yeah. Yeah. They also, this is where it feels weird. Like, so December 11th is when Tammy Daybell's death is suspicious. December 12th, Alex Cox passes away, reportedly from natural causes, which again is kind of like, that's weird. And December 20th, 2019 is when the Rexburg Police Department finally announced that JJ and Tylee are missing. And they are the ones that connect the suspicious death of Tammy to JJ and Tylee. And the next day, they said that Chad and Lori were persons of interest. And December 30th is when Melanie has a conversation with the officers saying that she asked Lori where her kids were.
Yeah. That's that conversation. She recorded it, incidentally, and played it back to the top. Yeah.
And they said Lori said, I know exactly where they are.
Yeah. Of course she does.
Of course she does. Of course she does. So January 3rd, 2020 is when they get a search warrant to serve Chad's home in Salem, Idaho. And they recover 43 items, including cell phones, journals, computers, medications, and they are sent to the FBI lab. January 7th is when Kay Woodcock and her husband traveled to Rexburg and announced a $20,000 reward for information leading to the recovery of the kids. This is when the media goes nuts butts. I remember this. It was all
It's also
over.
interesting. It's interesting to know that they've actually been missing for quite a while before they go labeled as missing children. That's a real good gap of time right there in that timeline.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I thought that timeline was so important, because they become dead. They are killed months before they are actually found missing, which is insane to me, because I don't know. I mean, like, how do kids slip through the cracks like this? I mean, Tylee.
And also, how do forensics slip through? Sometimes, in the case of Tammy Daybell, like when you're examining her body, how are you missing that the first time? And that happens. It does happen quite frequently where bodies have to get exhumed just to double check. Second opinion in murder cases is kind of the norm, unfortunately, sometimes.
Yeah.
And a lot more happen sooner.
Right, exactly. So we are now at now everybody's getting involved. The families are getting involved. So on January 10th, Matt Daybell, who's Chad's brother, pleads for him to cooperate with the investigation. There's like kids are missing. And he, of course, starts separating himself from Chad because he claims his religious claims and books are not of his immediate family's belief. So his immediate family has a little association with him. And on January 25th is when the Kauai Police Department served Lori with a notice stating she must produce JJ and Tylee to the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare or the Rexburg Police Department within 5 days. On January 26th, Nate Eaton with the East Idaho News confronts Chad and Lori in Hawaii. When they are asked where their children are, and what happened to them, they do not answer. And strangely enough, on January 30th, 2020, Lori misses the 5 p.m. deadline to produce JJ and Tylee. And
when she's presenting the papers, incidentally, in Hawaii, she's by the poolside.
Of course she is. Of course. She has absolutely no remorse whatsoever. And that's the same day that Kay Woodcock holds a news conference saying like how disappointed she is that, they're just not telling them where the kids are. Yeah. And a month later, it takes them a month or maybe a little less than a month. But February 20th, 2020, police in Kauai arrest Lori on a $5 million warrant from Madison County. And she is charged with 2 felony counts of desertion and non-support of dependent children. She is also charged with resisting officers, criminal solicitation, and contempt of court. And 6 days later, she is extradited. She waives her extradition to Idaho. And she says, she wants to go back to Idaho where she will be charged. And she tried multiple times to reduce her bail, but she couldn't get it reduced. So she was like, oh, I guess I'm going to have to go back. So on March 5th, 2020, she is finally extradited from Hawaii to Rexburg. And I'm thinking maybe
the trial itself is in Boise.
In Boise, Idaho. Yeah, that is correct. And I think at this point would be a good time to stop because the part 3 will go into her insane trial, which, was, again, we told you the results. She is found guilty. But for next episode is we will go through her trial. What happens
in JJ?
To Chad.
We haven't even gotten to them discovering JJ.
Exactly. So let's do that all next week, and stay tuned for kind of. I mean, I guess it's the closing act of this insane multi-family case where this woman is at the center of everything. Yeah, exactly.
And once again, a case with. Well, this is a great double whammy because it's technology and religion.
Yes.
Technology these days, in the days of murder and heinous crimes, we have so much information, including DNA, which was something, as you know, wasn't available. And then religion just plays such a role in a lot of these murders. So
Yeah,
absolutely, it's just like an intense case.
it is absolutely an intense case. So thanks again for sticking with us. I hope that that timeline made sense. Because again, at least when I started researching this case, the tsunami of information was so
Yeah,
hard to keep track of because
yeah,
there's so many players, so many
yeah,
family connections. And the timeline was weird because it's
yeah.
not a clean timeline like where the kids go missing and then somebody notices them the next day and say,
Yeah,
oh, hey, the kids are missing.
I
So
know. We're like here talking. I'm like, oh, and then this happened. Honestly, in my research as well, my notes just kind of fly all over the place because you'll start going chronologically, and then you're like, oh, and then it connects back to something that's at the start of your list.
yeah,
So it definitely was all over the place. So it definitely helps to have this kind of time map.
exactly. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us. And stay tuned for next week, part 3, the trial and discovery of the bodies in the Lori Vallow Daybell case. All right. Have a great week, everybody. Bye. This episode was sponsored by The Creek Killer, Book 1 in the Harriet Harper thriller series written by me, Dominika Best. What would you do if you read The Police Found Your Body in a Creek? Find out in The Creek Killer, available on Amazon. Thank you for joining me and listening to this episode. If you like my show, please give me a rating and review. It helps other listeners find this podcast. Follow Dominika Best Presents The Deviant Mind wherever you listen to your podcasts. Visit thebeststorytellingnetwork.com, where you'll find show notes, my books, links to social media, and much more. Join my Patreon for special subscriber perks, like 2 extra exclusive episodes a month and a Q&A with me at patreon.com/The Deviant Mind Podcast. Until next time.